Before we get started, there will be spoilers for the 1000-Year Blood War arc of Bleach in the video to come. Aizen and Yhwach are two of Bleach's greatest villains, and while the chances to see them interact with each other are rare, they're always rewarding. One such chance comes at the very start of the 1000-Year Blood War arc, where it's revealed that Yhwach visited Aizen deep within the shadowy depths of the prison Muken during the first Quincy invasion, in an attempt to recruit the traitorous Shinigami to his side. While the original chapter skirted around actually showing us their encounter, the anime delved into it, throwing back the curtain and reveling in this coming together of titans. As you might expect from two of the most prominent villainous minds of the series, however, there was much more to their conversation than initially meets the eye. Stumbling upon a post on Reddit this morning, I discovered a treasure trove of fascinating information regarding several of the new and expanded scenes found in the 1000-Year Blood War arc anime, which I want to dive into both today and in a few future videos to come as well. The information comes from Bleach EX, courtesy of Twitter user Bleach_KRKRK, and has been compiled on Reddit by Arturo Plateado of Bleach Shattered Blade and Third Phantom fame, and it provides a compelling insight into several intriguing subjects. I've linked the post in the description, but as always, I wanted to go over the information with you and provide some of my own thoughts and analysis as well. As you've probably guessed from the introduction, the topic we'll be exploring in today's video is the brief conversation between Aizen and Yhwach and the nuances that go into a dialogue like that. The information from Bleach EX sheds a revealing light on Aizen's true power and how he's having to use his Kyokusuigetsu these days, as well as Yhwach's intentions and schemes, including how the Quincy King viewed Aizen as an asset to the war effort and the mistakes he made in dealing with him. So, let's take a look. It's clear from Yhwach's desire to seek Aizen out that even at this early stage of the war, the Quincy King sees the former captain as a huge threat to his plans. Despite his imprisonment, Aizen is still considered one of the 5 special war powers, so Yhwach understandably tries to get to him first, hoping to prey on any resentment Aizen might hold towards the Soul Society. We know that Aizen is immortal thanks to fusing with the Hogyoku. Yes, despite his defeat in the Deicide arc, Aizen is still one with the Hogyoku and therefore can't die, though the limits of that have never truly been tested. Sure, Ichigo's Mugetsu splits him in half and he still regenerates, but what if his body was vaporized, like, say, Yamamoto's? Either way, it doesn't seem like he would stay dead regardless of what Yhwach tried, as the information from Bleach EX notes that Yhwach knew he wasn't capable of killing Aizen himself. And this makes sense to me. As far as I'm concerned, there's no way this particular version of Yhwach would be strong enough to either destroy the Hogyoku or kill Aizen. Though I did bring up this topic in my video a little while back now, looking at whether Aizen could have defeated Yhwach on his own during the final battle, arguing that they were both essentially immortal at the time, but that Yhwach packed unbelievable firepower thanks to having absorbed the Soul King along with his the Almighty. And to this day, I do still wonder if that particular version of Yhwach, the Soul King variant, could kill Aizen, but that's neither here nor there right now. Plus, if Yhwach thought he could kill Aizen during their meeting, he almost certainly would have tried immediately. That being said, at least according to the English subtitles, during their conversation, Yhwach simply says that it would take too long to kill Aizen or restrain him to bring him with them, not that he couldn't kill him at all. Speaking of restraining Aizen, it's noted that Yhwach could have sealed or suppressed Aizen if he felt it was necessary. I assume Yhwach would have only resorted to this for one of two possible reasons, one being, as I just mentioned, to forcibly bring Aizen with them back to the Vandenreich as they tried to do with Ichigo, and the other was probably just a contingency plan of Yhwach's for if Aizen somehow broke out and tried to assist the Soul Society or just tried to kill Yhwach in that moment during the first invasion. But the Quincy King deemed that being locked up in Muken was already akin to being sealed by him anyway, and that there really was no difference. For those wondering, as I was, the way Yhwach would seal Aizen is referenced as being the same way in which he contained Gremmy. In the source material, it was only ever mentioned that Gremmy was locked up, but of course with his power of the Visionary, whatever cage he was in would need to be rather special, certainly more than just your average cage, and apparently Yhwach is capable of manifesting such a powerful barrier himself, similar to the conditions of Muken, capable of either suppressing or outright negating Gremmy's powers. And so, in the end, Yhwach realised he couldn't kill Aizen, and also that there was no need to seal him either. He had him right where he wanted him, so he figured the best course of action was instead to appease Aizen with a direct appeal to him and his ego, offering him a position within the Vandenreich himself. Yhwach figured, probably correctly, that he needed to make Aizen an actual ally of theirs, as he was concerned that should Aizen join them only to betray them later, it would severely damage the Vandenreich and its military capability, so he tries to convince Aizen that they walk the same path. And of course, this whole section is really supposed to show you that Yhwach completely misunderstands Aizen, what he wants and what he's all about. During this sequence in the anime, Yhwach notes that both he and Aizen want the same thing, the destruction of Soul Society. But like I said, it's here that we see Yhwach has critically misunderstood and even underestimated what Aizen is truly after and where he's coming from, and Aizen really kind of just throws that back in his face. And this leads us nicely into the crucial error that Yhwach makes here. During the sequence in the anime, we see that the Quincy King almost becomes offended by Aizen's mocking words, as the former captain seemingly taunts him for treading the same path as a Shinigami. Yhwach briskly turns to leave as Aizen muses that they must fear his strength, but as far as Yhwach is concerned, their conversation is over, and as he notes to Yamamoto, Aizen has all the time in the world to think about his decision, implying Yhwach believes that with enough time, Aizen will come around of his own accord. As a quick aside before we move on, I wonder how easily, if Yhwach had decided to free Aizen in this moment, I wonder how easily he would have been able to do so. I assume fairly easily. The prison of Muken itself, I have to imagine, is mostly designed to prevent powerful Shinigami from escaping. It's unlikely that other races are contained here. It's hard for me to believe that there would be many opportunities for that to happen, so presumably a Quincy could probably bust in and out of Muken with relative ease, so if Yhwach decided he wanted to free Aizen, he could have done so with very little difficulty, but as you can probably tell, that is only speculation on my part. It just seems to make sense to me that Muken wouldn't really be set up to defend against Quincy in particular. Again though, that is total guesswork on my part. It could be that Muken is actually designed to stop anything and everything from getting out or even getting in, which of course would be the smarter way to design your maximum security prison. Then of course we have to answer the question of how Yhwach got in here in the first place. Yhwach doesn't feel he needs to do anything else in regards to Aizen, and therein lies Yhwach's miscalculation. Certainly, Aizen would never join the Vandenreich, he would never be subjugated by the Quincy King, but crucially, Yhwach didn't expect him to eventually ally himself with the Soul Society instead. But of course, the truth that Yhwach seems to be blind to is that Aizen has never sought the destruction of the Soul Society, only the toppling of its long-standing regime, which Aizen sees as an affront born out of blood. He wanted to change things at the top, to rule in place of the abomination that was the Soul King. But Yhwach wants to completely raze it all to the ground and reset the world to its original state. And so, while it might have seemed like Yhwach didn't have many options left in regards to Aizen, simply leaving him there in Muken was a mistake, as it gave the Soul Society a chance to get to him next with a better offer. And in the end, Aizen chose to fight for them. I will say, I love the fact that Aizen starts out the arc as a sort of neutral party that both sides attempt to win over. That speaks as well, I think, to the shadiness of Kyoraku that he'd stoop to the same level as their enemy in order to succeed. The information from Bleach X also makes note of how Aizen's powers work now that he's been sealed, but also now that he's fused with his zanpakuto, Kyokusuigetsu. As many of us suspected based on what happens in the original chapter, Aizen is able to utilise his complete hypnosis ability without his blade now, but apparently the effect is weaker when doing so. The original tweets mention that using his zanpakuto in this way is akin to using a Kido spell without reciting the chant first. It's interesting that Aizen can seemingly manifest his blade whenever he wants, as we see during the final battle against the Yhwach at the end of the 1000-Year Blood War arc. Presumably when he does so, as noted by Arturo Plateado in the original Reddit post, Kyokusuigetsu's illusory powers return to their original strength, which is how, as far as I'm concerned, he was able to confound Yhwach up close and personal during their battle. Though I do have to question just how much of that is all part of the illusion. Does Aizen actually have his blade on him in that moment? Because of course when we do see, at long last, the true Aizen, right at the end of the final battle, he isn't wielding his blade at all. And the idea of his complete hypnosis being slightly weaker without the sword would track with the fact that he doesn't seem to know what Yhwach is seeing, only that Yhwach is successfully under his illusions, which is something we've brought up in the past as well. At the very end of the final fight, when the big twist is revealed, Aizen says, "So I appear to you as Ichigo Kurosaki," which would imply to me at least that he doesn't have as much control over his complete hypnosis that he once did, or that he does with his blade. So, going on that, maybe he never manifested his blade in that final battle at all. I think I've said this before, but the final battle is something I want to dive into at a later date, and we definitely will do so. But also confirming that Aizen used his powers on the Quincy King during their initial meeting does also confirm, as if we didn't already know, that Yhwach was under the influence of Kyokusuigetsu for the entirety of the 1000-Year Blood War arc leading up to the finale. It's also revealed that Aizen apparently flooded Muken with his Reiatsu in order to use Kyokusuigetsu on Yhwach to alter his perception of time. I have a few questions regarding this. First of all, how long was Aizen filling Muken with his power for? I guess it makes sense that he would do that regardless of whether or not Yhwach was coming. It gives him some level of control over his imprisoned state. If he only started doing it because he sensed Yhwach was on his way, however, how long does it take to work? Isn't Muken supposed to be an infinite space? Perhaps Aizen only used enough power to flood the area surrounding him. I'm unclear about one aspect of this notion, however. If Aizen truly flooded Muken with his Reiatsu, surely Yhwach would have felt it the moment he entered the prison. Perhaps he did, and it simply didn't concern him, but it feels to me like something he would have been aware of. Maybe he thought Aizen couldn't affect him in his current state no matter what, only to be surprised to be proven wrong later on after leaving Muken itself. One thing I've always wondered as well, though, which is tangentially related to this, is how Aizen knew he needed to shift Yhwach's perception of time in the first place. Maybe he was trying to make it so Yhwach had to face Ichigo, as the Quincy King does try to leave before that confrontation can occur. But the whole having to return to the Schattenbereich after a certain amount of time concept is a weird plot point that's never really revisited anyway. It was almost like Yhwach was dead and had to return to his world, or maybe his living body would deteriorate or something, and perhaps Aizen knew that simply by knowing the mythos behind the sealed Quincy King. But again, it's never followed up. Finally, again as noted by Arturo Plateado over on the Reddit post, Spirits Are Forever With You reveals that Muken is full of seals that quash the zanpakuto of its prisoners, weakening them to prevent them from interacting with the outside world. I assume Aizen, being truly fused with Kyokusuigetsu, does make him a bit of a special case, so him flooding the area with his Reiatsu, which is now technically infused with the power of complete hypnosis as well, is his way of bypassing those seals. So him flooding the area with his reiatsu, which again is now technically infused with the power of complete hypnosis as well, is his way of bypassing those seals. So that's everything on the meeting between Aizen and Yhwach during the first Quincy invasion. We now have a much better idea of what Yhwach was thinking when he approached the fallen captain, having thought about both trying to kill Aizen or seal him in order to forcibly take him back with them. However, Yhwach instead attempted to pacify Aizen by relating to him and his own goals, but to no avail. Leaving Aizen there was a mistake, however, as it allowed the Soul Society to win him over as an ally instead, something Yhwach never expected to happen. And we also learn the truth about the nature of Aizen's powers while he's been in prison, and how he was able to influence Yhwach despite being sealed. It's all pretty interesting stuff, and it's nice to get an expansion on something that was already an additional scene itself in the anime. Thanks again to Bleach KRKRK for the initial information from Bleach EX, and to Arturo Plateado for compiling it over on Reddit. Again, let me know your thoughts down in the comments below. What do you think of this new information regarding the meeting between Aizen and Yhwach? Does it change the way you see these two characters interacting at all? Now we know a little bit more about what was going on inside Yhwach's head. Now we know more about how Aizen potentially prepared himself for the meeting, flooding the area with his reiatsu in order to ensnare Yhwach. I'd love to hear your thoughts down in the comments below. And I want to end, as we always do, by giving an enormous shout out and saying a huge thank you to my supporters over on Patreon. I really do appreciate each and every one of you so very much. Your support over there does mean the absolute world to me. If you too like what I do here on YouTube and you want to support me over on Patreon as well, you can do just that to get your name in the credits like this, and to get every video I release absolutely ad-free. Alright guys, but until next time, I'll catch you later, and I'll see you then.